Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today we are going to be talking about the carrier rework and how I think it's done for the past 6 or so months that it has been out, and what I think about carriers now and all of that fancy smancy jazz. So, for those of you that do not know, some of you newer players, the carriers class, oh wow, I really butchered that name. The carrier class before wasn't played like it is now. That's why it's called the CV rework. Before, it was top down, more like an RTS game rather than, the direct control of squadrons that it is now. And before, carriers were quite rare. You would see them, I don't know, maybe every 7 or 8 games, and they had limited planes. You could manually select targets just like with secondaries, and you could manually select squadrons, and your AA would focus on that. And yeah, it was kind of like that, but the carriers that were around back then, the players at least, they were really good at what they did, and a very good carrier player could absolutely win the match for his team. And there was very little you could do about it, but you only had to deal with it every 7, 8 games-ish, and that's what it was like. So, Wargaming decided to change that. And I don't think it was really about balance. It was more about the class wasn't really played that much from, what Wargaming has said about the rework. And they were trying to open it up to everybody. So good on them for that. And I did play a little bit of carriers back then. I sucked at it a lot. But I did manage to grind my way up to the tier 6 American carrier. And I also had bought the Enterprise because I like Star Trek and, well, yeah, Enterprise. So I did play a bit of Enterprise back then. It was pretty overpowered, which it still kind of is. We'll talk more about that in a minute. So that was my limited carrier experience before the rework. After the rework and through all the testing, I of course played carriers quite a bit. And yeah, if you guys were around for, I know most of you were, those of you that were around for the launch remember how extremely overpowered carriers were. And well, since they just got reworked, everyone was playing them. So you had 2 carriers per team in games, and even at lower tiers, you had 3 carriers per team. And phew, that had to be rough. Thankfully, I didn't play too many lower tiers, but the top tier carriers, it was pretty terrifying to be on the receiving end of one. So that happened, and then Wargaming finally released just a barrage of hotfix after hotfix after hotfix for the carriers, and eventually got to the point to where the hotfixes calmed down, and now we're kind of seeing with each change to the carrier class, they're going from being extremely overpowered to kind of useless. And in Graf Zeppelin's case, very useless because the poor ship has been nerfed so many times since it's been re-released. It makes me sad thinking about it. And it just keeps going back and forth from overpowered to useless, overpowered to useless, overpowered to useless. And there are players who, of course, carrier players, they're not going to give up their class just because of that. And they learn to cope with this, and they're very dedicated, and they're very good, again, at playing carriers. So even when most other carriers are pretty, carrier players are pretty ineffective, you have these guys that are still very effective. And the thing is, these casual carrier players that, once they see that they're almost useless in every game, they stop playing carriers and go back to whatever other class that they played before. Like me, I'm a battleship main, and I did play carriers for a very long time after the rework, but once they well, it was actually 2 patches ago now, when AA got like super buffed, I stopped really playing because my favorite carrier was the Graf Zeppelin, and that for the poor Zeppelin again. It was just so ineffective at being a carrier. I just stopped playing and went back to playing mostly battleships and cruisers. So, like me, those guys have stopped playing carriers, and now we're mostly seeing the dedicated carrier players playing now, which means that it's kind of almost gone back to where it was before, where you only saw a carrier every 6 or 7 games, except I'd say it's more along the lines of every 4 or 5 games now, and the carrier players are usually pretty dang good. Now, they can't absolutely dominate the battlefield like they used to back in the day, but they can certainly make a sizable impact, which, fair enough, they should be able to. And that's kind of where we're at now, to where if you're really good at carriers, you are really good at carriers, and where if you're just if you're just a casual player, you kind of just sit around and just try to do your best, but it's usually not very much. Me and the Graf Zeppelin, every game, even when I'm top tier, it's like 40, 50, 60,000 damage, which, I mean, I guess isn't terrible for the Graf Zeppelin, but before the super AA buff, I could still do like 80 or 90,000 damage in the Graf Zeppelin, and when I had a decent game, I could get over 100,000 damage, but again, after the last patch, it's kind of a hopeless thing. And that's kind of where we are now. So, it's just this nightmare of balancing, it seems, for wargaming. They just can't get it down right. And they've seemed to have fixed the AA not feeling consistent, because now, I would say, from my experience, AA definitely feels consistent. It's just that in order to do that, you know, it's almost like every plane is a blender, unless it's something like a Musashi or a Tirpitz that simply doesn't have a great number of AA mounts on it. And there still are problems with the carriers, like the perma spotting. You know, poor destroyers still, they still get spotted all the time. And I mean, of course, you could say that's part of the carrier being the carrier, but still, it's no fun being spotted the entire game. And most of the times, the way it works being a carrier is you basically just have to find one ship to pick on and keep picking on them the entire match in order to get your damage in. Because carriers are just so much damage over time, rather than just the one-hit wonders they used to be back in the day. And it's annoying if you are selected by the carrier to be his plaything for most of the match. I know, it's happened to me plenty of times. Now, is this where carriers should be, in my opinion? In my opinion, this is kind of where carriers should be, except that you shouldn't have to be a highly skilled carrier player in order to just be a good carrier for the game. Because you have to be very, very, very skilled in carriers to have a huge impact in the game, or just, you know, have one of those games where the enemy team's just half brain dead for most of the time, or just get the right combination of ships on the enemy team they just don't get a lot of AA ships, and it's just your playground at that point. But that's what I think. The skill gap has just widened even more than before, it seems. And it's kind of like they're having to balance it for the most skilled players, to where all the casual and lesser skilled carrier players are just getting left in the dust. And that's kind of what it feels like to me right now. Now, certainly this could be due to their implementation of it, to where they kind of just pushed it out the door, and basically the first 2 months of the carrier rework being released was kind of just like a huge beta test, and they were just releasing hotfix after hotfix after hotfix for it. Because, I mean, let's face the facts, this game doesn't have a very large player base compared to other AAA games, so there's only so much testing Wargaming could do in closed tests that weren't on the live servers. So I'm not sure you can really fault them too much there, because I certainly used to subscribe to that thought, but then I really got down to thinking about it, and, you know, there's not a whole lot of players in this game compared to some other games, especially in North America. I know this game's much, much bigger in Europe, but yeah, so and they kind of made the community suffer through that huge beta test for those first couple of months, and that's kind of just left a sour taste in everyone's mouth toward the carrier class. And I don't think near as many people left as they said were going to, as, you know, you were reading just in YouTube videos, Facebook posts, Reddit, forums. People were just saying, well, once this goes live, I'm done with the game. I don't think a whole lot of people left. It certainly doesn't seem like that in North America, at least. So yeah. And I know there is a good group of people still that think that carriers just shouldn't be in the game, but I mean, it's this is a game called Warships. One of the most pivotal inventions in naval warfare in the 20th century was aircraft carriers. So I feel they certainly do belong in the game. And even as much as I hated them being overpowered early on, I still believe that they belonged in the game. You know, it pretty much defined naval combat during World War II. It was all about carriers. Even though that did lead to the extinction of the battleship, which I'm still a huge battleship fan. I wish they still made battleships today because they're cool. And yeah, I know that there's no logical sense behind having a battleship anymore, but they're cool. I think they're cool. But still, I still think they should be in the game. And this is an important class in the game, and I do hope they fix some of the bigger problems right now, which right now the biggest problem with the carriers is, 1, the humongous skill gap, 2, the permanent spotting of, well, everything, and 3, definitely the AA. The AA still needs work. It's, in my opinion, it's a bit overpowered right now. They can afford to tone it back a bit, and, you know, hopefully this just swinging from overpowered to underpowered, they'll find a happy medium somewhere, hopefully soon. They seem to have kind of backed off of the hot fixes for the carriers for now. They're focusing on other things finally again. And, you know, I just hope they get it right. And so far, I would say this is kind of a... how would I word this? Kind of a stumbling in the right direction. You know, it's not like they found the hard line in the right direction. They're going in it. It's kind of like they're kind of drunk and they're stumbling in the right direction. And hopefully they'll eventually just hit that sweet spot and get it right. Because I really like this game. And I do believe carriers should be in it. Even though, you know, I don't play them all that much. But they do belong in the game. And hopefully they'll hit the sweet spot soon. So that's what I think about the carrier rework in the past 6 months. And all the turmoil that's been around them. But yeah, I feel like they're going in the right direction. It's just probably going to take them, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 more months to get it just right. And hopefully that point will come soon. So anyway, guys, that's my thoughts on this subject. Please tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. And again, tell me what you think about the carriers below. Hope you're having a wonderful it's Saturday. Yeah, that is this day that this video is coming out. And hope to catch you guys in the next one.